In tonight's tax tip, Eric Scott discusses a relatively new law that can help you legally avoid paying tax on capital gains, even in this volatile market.
People have seen their portfolios go down, but because of the buying and selling within the portfolio, they still had to pay some taxes. If you are in a 15% tax bracket or lower, you can sell securities, mutual funds, stocks, and so forth at a gain and pay no tax. This is the key as a married couple in 2009 filing $67,900. Any dollar amount below that, if you sell a gain, you do not have to pay capital gains tax. You want to understand different investments, understand the tax laws. So you may earn more than adjusted gross income of $67,900, but you want to use the right type of investments so it's not reported and keeps you below the $67,900. Yeah, as a married couple, you want to be aware of the threshold that you want to keep your adjusted gross income below $67,900. And as a single person, it's a little bit over $33,000. This law is only effective through 2010, and then it is gone. So it was only effective for 3 years. So if you're being taxed on capital gains, but your income as a married couple is below $67,900, if you design it right, you can sell and not pay any capital gains tax this year or next year.
For more information about capital gains, just log on to ericscottfinancial.com.
Tax tip, Eric Scott discusses how to avoid double taxation when you start taking Social Security.
Most people do not realize it until the day they retire, that when they start receiving a Social Security check from the government, that if they are not careful, they can actually be taxed on that check. If you're single, earning more than $34,000 a year, they can now tax up to 85% of your Social Security benefit at your current rate. And as a married couple, it's up to, after you've earned $44,000 or more a year, they can tax up to 85% of your Social Security at your current tax rate. We had some people come in, and we look at this every single time we look at a tax return. When they came in, they were paying tax on 85% of their Social Security check. They were earning more than $44,000 a year adjusted gross income. When we got done looking and reviewing at their tax return, within 10 minutes, we automatically saw that we could reduce their taxes on their Social Security check to where only 50% was being taxed because they had money in different categories where they did not need it, and they were paying taxes on that gain where it should have been a tax-deferred or tax-free account. We want to see what your situation is, where your investments are, what your taxes are, and then by doing some readjusting and using tax-deferred, tax-free accounts instead of all these taxable accounts, you can reduce your taxes on Social Security income and in many cases in other areas. It's interesting, over 70% of the people that we meet with, we are able to reduce taxes on their Social Security check just by one free visit.
For more tax information, just log on to ericscottfinancial.com or give them a call at 773-9444.
In tonight's tax tip, KCSG's financial advisor Eric Scott tells us how just a couple of hours of planning can save a couple thousand, maybe even hundreds of thousands of dollars.
I bet not one person has ever thought about what happens to tax bracket when one of the spouses leaves. You work your whole life. You're enjoying retirement, and you and your spouse, things are going along great. You've done all your planning for estate planning and things like that, but you forget one thing. And on the way out the door, when one of you pass away, you created sometimes the biggest tax problem for the spouse left behind than you've ever done. Let me go through the numbers to help you understand the tax brackets for a married couple versus a single couple. If you're earning $67,900 to $137,000 plus, your tax bracket now goes to 25%. When the spouse becomes single and the filing takes place, she will have to pay a lot more tax, and this is why. Let me show you what it looks like for a single person. But if their income as a single filer goes above $33,950 to $82,250, they are now in a 25% tax bracket. Because the income doesn't change much, but the spouse's Social Security check, look at the tax bracket. You go from $67,900 to $33,950. All of a sudden, now they're paying tax at 25% tax rate, not 15% on the majority. We had a lady that came into our office for a visit, and her husband had dementia and so forth, and he was given just a few more years to live. When we met with her and showed her what was going to happen to her taxes, she was stunned. She says, you know, in my 78 years, no one's ever taken the time to want to show me or help me. You're the first person. What we were able to do, because we still had a little bit of time to plan, we were able to, by making some changes and understanding the tax laws, and kept her money safe. We did not put her money at risk, but she had a fair return. We were able to keep her in the 15% tax bracket, where before she would have moved to the 25% on a little bit less income. There are ways to do that. Planning is very, very important.
For more help and information with tax planning and IRAs, you can call Eric Scott at 773-9444 or just go to ericscottfinancial.com. This financial tip deals with a topic a lot of people don't like to talk about, much less think about. But Eric Scott from Eric Scott Financial says he's seeing a lot of problems with the beneficiaries that people name, or for that matter, don't name in their wills.
You say, well, what's a beneficiary? That would be a spouse or children or a trust or grandchildren or a charity. And beneficiary simply means, where is this account going to? Laws change quite often. In those laws, it becomes very, very important to make sure your beneficiaries are always up to date. You want to check names, and you want to check how they're actually worded, because that plays a big part. You want to disinherit anybody, and then you want to look at trust versus individuals. We have changes in our lives all the time. We get remarried, or it's a first marriage, and we had our parents as beneficiary designations, or we have children that come along, or we create a trust, or we have divorces, or we have children that become handicapped from an accident. We find people aren't changing their beneficiaries. They're not aware of the verbiage and what goes on. So I want to share a story with you just for a minute. And this actually a few years ago showed up in the New York Post. And this gentleman had been married to his spouse for over 30 years. She died from medical problems. Her husband lost the pension. But what was a big concern was, well, I'm okay. I'm getting $1 million in the 401k. We're going to be okay. When they checked the beneficiary designation, she never changed it. So her mother had passed away. Her uncle had passed away. Her sister, his sister-in-law, was the beneficiary. Who got the $1 million? The sister-in-law. The designation of a beneficiary is ironclad. It can never be changed. If you are not keeping up to date with all the law changes and beneficiary designations, you could have a big problem. You need to remember, you can fix it while you're breathing, while you're living. But if you happen to walk away from this life, you can't fix it. It's over. And you need to review it yearly, because we see changes just from 6 months ago from a law or your particular individual life. You need to keep it up to date. We review that every year with our clients, and we find changes all the time.
Eric Scott offers free consultations to review beneficiaries. You can just log on to ericscottfinancial.com for more information.